Hey, good morning everybody. This hopefully will be an abbreviated version of what you see up there. You see, the three Sonic SatAM episodes that I'm going to review or talk about are Blast of the Past, the two-parter, which if you put together is one episode, period. Sonic and the Secret Scrolls, and Doomsday Project. Now, basically what this is this is a video that I am, well, first of all, this is a video I'm posting after doing my written thoughts and everything. You see, apparently everybody's always saying I should write down my thoughts and everything instead of doing videos, so I figured, why not write down what I think about certain things first now, and then do a video later on. Or vice versa, it doesn't matter. Either way, they're going to get a written version. But anyway, let's talk about the three episodes here. Now, I'm going to hopefully do this more shortly and abbreviated. So if you want to read exactly what I'm talking about in more detail, I'll provide a link to one of the sites you can read these at and hopefully judge for yourself. Now, I start here with Blast of the Past. Now, as I mentioned in the text here, and like I said, you could read this later on, I mentioned, and this is totally truthful, that myself and just about any other fan out there really has nothing against this episode. We have nothing against this two-part episode. I mean, the animation's good, the storytelling's good, the writing's good. Overall, it is good. And from a story standpoint, it shows us why the freedom fighters are fighting Robotnik, on how this all occurred. It's showing us from a standpoint how this all happened and why the freedom fighters are fighting the war that they are. You know, I point out that this two-part episode had many revelations, especially in the first part. I mean, in the first part, we find out that it wasn't Robotnik, but it was Sonic's own uncle, his Uncle Chuck, that had invented the roboticizer. Now, basically, I didn't put it into detail here, I didn't write it down, but the reason that he built it was to help older people live longer, or if you look at it from a comic book standpoint, to help heal the wounded. But instead, a mishap happened and it took away the free will. And then we find out that Robotnik stole the files and everything. Another revelation is we find out that it's Sally's own father, the King, King Max, that had entrusted Robotnik to go out and do exactly what he was hoping he'd do, and that's win the war against the human beings known as the Overlanders. That's all, again, like I say, depending on which version you read, whether it's the SatAM version that you watch or the comic book version that you read, but it's kind of both the same, with a few additions and elements added in the comic books. Now, again, as I mentioned, I have nothing, myself and many other fans have nothing against this two-part episode, but I do point out there are those that do have some issues. Yes, it's true. There are those out there that do have some issue with the two-part Blast of the Past. One of the major plot points, or one of the major plot holes, is some fans point out that they criticize, that some fans criticize about this two-parter. One of the plot holes is that Sonic and Sally of the future end up leaving too many clues of the fact that they are from the future in the past. They leave, basically some people are criticizing that they left too many clues behind in the past, indicating that they are from the future. Now, another complaint some actually do have, and this is kind of, and I do kind of argue this, but one complaint some people do have is the fact that Sally tells their nanny, Rosie, to not leave Knothole due to the fact that she ends up later on, when they're kids, getting captured and roboticized. Now, this is a complaint of the fact that they ended up sort of changing, basically sort of altering and changing history in that past to coincide with the present. Now, the reason I argue this whole thing with Sally having Rosie stay in Knothole is I believe Rosie is Sally's closest thing to having family around. So basically, that's basically why I think she had Rosie keep her promise, because Rosie, like I said, is the closest thing she has to an actual family in the cartoon series. Now, another complaint some fans have is when Sonic spun Robotnik around towards the end of Part 2 and caused Robotnik's arm, his left arm, to fall right into the roboticizer and end up being roboticized into cybernetic mechanic, into a cybernetic mechanical arm. Now, some people pointed out that Robotnik should have been able to remember this in the present day and remind Sonic of what he had done. Now, some other people would say he could have also reminded Sonic of what he'd done and shown that, hey, you may have hurt me, you may have think you hurt me, but in fact you've improved me, or whatever. But again, this whole thing of him not remembering that or recalling how his arm became half cybernetic all goes back to the fact that Sonic and Sally left clues of themselves being from the future in the past, but yet Robotnik doesn't remember this. And basically, what I point out, now I do agree that these complaints, now I do agree that a lot of the fans, now some of these fans that do complain about these, now basically what I say is that the fans that have these arguments and complaints, I will agree from an unbiased standpoint that they are very valid. They're on point as very valid points. But I also point out that there has not been one time travel episode in animation or live action that where you had the good guys go back in time, do something or several things, if you will, that will coincide with similar situations in the future, their present day. That does not mean that the villain characters, that basically what I'm saying is that even though, let's say in this case Sonic and Sally going back and making some altercations, like Sally having Rosie stay in Knothole and Sonic causing Robotnik's left arm to be roboticized, it does not mean that villain character, in this case Robotnik, or the good guy character in Rosie, will recall exactly why they're doing, why this happened, or why they're staying in the village and not leaving them. They're staying in the village and not leaving it. You know, it makes them kind of, you know, wonder why, you know, they, like in Rosie's case, why she's hesitant to not want to leave the village, and why Robotnik, it makes Robotnik wonder why and how his arm came to be his left arm came to be roboticized. And basically what I'm trying to say, I know I promised I'd try to do this abbreviated wise, and I promise I'm trying to get this out all in as fast as I can. But basically what I'm pointing out is what I've discovered in some time travel episodes, as well as some in other animation shows and live action shows and even movies, is that even though the good guy characters will do stuff like that, in this case Sonic and Sally, it doesn't mean that the villain characters or even the other good guy characters will remember what they've done. In other words, sometimes time travel is only done so that those that went time traveling, in this case Sonic and Sally, will remember and recall what they've done, but those that they've met in the past, like say Rosie and Robotnik, won't recall a single thing. Basically it'll be wiped from the memories, and all they'll remember is maybe the promise Rosie is the promise that Rosie was, you know, promised to keep to Sally, and Robotnik probably recall always something happening, some kind of, you know, confrontation where he ended up getting his left arm roboticized but not remembering how or who did it. But again, as I said, those that argued these points have valid points, do have some, from an unbiased standpoint, do have some valid points. I'm sorry if I'm kind of rambling on a little there, so I apologize. Now, my complaint, if anything, my complaint is that they didn't start the second season with this two-part episode. That's my only complaint. Because I feel if they would have started this with they would have started season 2 with Blast of the Past, it would have not only given us an idea and an understanding of why the Freedom Fighters are battling Robotnik, but it would have allowed us to flow directly right into the second season, and episodes like Game Guy and Conversion would have followed better suit than what we had. But as I also point out, it's not the first time that an animated or live action series has done this, where they've had their origin story or a time travel origin story told in the middle of the season or the middle of the series. It's not the first time. So, to me, I believe it was the biggest flaw with its scheduling and all. Again, though, as I have said, myself and many others out there have nothing really against it besides maybe that flaw, due to the fact that we feel, we probably all will agree, it would have done better as the season premiere for season 2. But overall, story-wise, animation-wise, action-wise, it was tremendous. It's one of the more memorable episodes. Now, Sonic and the Secret Scrolls from season 1, all depending on how you look at it, to me, when I saw it and the way I observed it, Sonic and the Secret Scrolls were basically the season 1 finale. That's what I feel it was. I mean, when you take a look at the end of when Robotnik survives and then swears that Sonic will pay dearly for what he's done, that kind of gives you an indication that that's a season finale leading you into the new season. Now, to me, now some people have agreed that one of the things they did that really expanded, it was a positive, is they expanded on the planet Mobius. Basically, they didn't have the Freedom Fighters regulated to just being in Knothole Village or having a mission in Robotropolis or in those vicinities, but it expanded on them being able to go to other places. And it also showed that they were willing to build and create whatever they needed to try to help them find a solution to winning the war against Robotnik. In this case, they were willing to take their time and build this biplane, if you will, called the Freedom Stormer, to help them reach the mountains of Magna, if you will, to find the secret scrolls. Because Magna basically is unreachable for them to reach from a normal standpoint, even unreachable for, like, say, Sonic, if you will. Now, to me, I felt that if they would have decided, if Sega, along with Dick Entertainment and Archie Comics, would have decided to sell some action figures of the characters back in that day, back in the 90s, that the Freedom Stormer, because we all know, like with Transformers and Ninja Turtles, they always sell separate stuff like vehicles and whatever else, right? Accessories. Well, I feel that if they would have had the Freedom Fighters sold as action figures in toy stores, that one of the vehicles and accessories that would have sold very well along with them, would have been the Freedom Stormer. But that's just, my opinion. But again, that never happened because the action figures were never sold or even made. Now, again though, there are some fans that do have some complaints with this episode. Yeah, believe it or not, they do have some complaints. Now, I don't blame anybody for feeling this way, as I say in the text here. I don't blame anybody for feeling this way, and I'll tell you why in part 2. I'm sorry I had to do this in 2 parts.